But welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our round forum discussion on Latin America. We have an esteemed panel of guests for you today, and we're really going to drill down into tech, into investment opportunities, into startups, and of course the fantastic heads of business, the captains of industry I have with me. VC funding in Latin America rose exponentially, accelerating the rise of unicorns in recent years, not least in 2021, when some 18 unicorns alone were created. The pandemic has also helped accelerate digitalization, and the young population means that there are a hungry, tech-savvy workforce and startup entrepreneurs potentially in the making, just waiting in the wings. So the question is, where do we invest? How do we invest? And where is innovation and tech development really lacking? No finer men to answer those tricky questions than the gentleman I have here. Let me start by introducing Pierpaolo Barbieri. He is the founder and CEO of Uala. He is from Argentina. Please welcome him.
Thank you.
Next, we have Marcelo Lima. He is the managing director of Monashees from Brazil. Please welcome him also. Next, we have Sebastian Mejia. He is the founder and CEO of Rappi from Colombia. Welcome. José Auriemo is the chairman of JHSF Participações, also, and he is welcome from Brazil. Please join me in saying hello to him. You have to forgive my pronunciation. It's not my mother tongue. And last, but by no means least, to my right, I have Carlos Ottati. He is the founder and the CEO of Kavak from Venezuela. Please welcome him too. Gentlemen, welcome again. We don't have much time on the clock, so I'm going to get started, but also want you to give a brief overview of who you are, what you do, and why you're sitting on this panel. Pierpaolo.
My name is Pierpaolo Barbieri. I come from Argentina, and we have a full-service neobank in Argentina, Colombia, and Mexico, servicing around 6 million clients to whom we provide financial services from accounts to debit cards, credit, investments, insurance, and merchant acquiring. And we onboard around 250,000 clients every month.
Fantastic. Marcelo, let me come to you. Tell me about your company.
Yeah, I'm Marcelo, partner at Monashees. Monashees is a leading Latin America venture firm. We are very focused on early stage, so we co-lead Series A's and seeds, and also we have a growth opportunity fund. Mm-hmm. We have $2.5 billion in assets under management, have invested in around 100 companies in the last 15 years. And it's interesting, we have started like 15 years ago, so we saw a lot of devolution in tech and VC in Latin America. So it's a pleasure to share a little bit more about these years here.
Thank you. You really have seen the evolutions, haven't you? Sebastian, let me come to you next. Tell me about yourself and your company.
Founder of Rappi. We're building the foundational delivery and e-commerce company across the region, serving 9 markets. We offer groceries, restaurants, and other categories, as well as financial services. Mm-hmm. And we build infrastructure for businesses to enable and digitize themselves and be able to participate in e-commerce.
Thank you. José, please tell me about your fantastic company.
Our company is JHSF Participações.
That's the way to say it.
We are a company focused on luxury business, providing different solutions for the high-end clients on real estate, basically real estate developments designed to first and second residences, hotel and gastronomy platform to our brand called Fazano, also through shopping malls and some retail operations in Brazil. So our company runs some of about 25 to 30 international brands in Brazil connected to luxury retail, and also an airport designed for the executive aviation. So we work on ecosystem for the high-end client, and also right now integrated through a digital platform called JHSF ID.
Thank you so much. Carlos.
I'm Carlos, I'm from Venezuela. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been building companies most of my life, successful ones, the last 2 recent ones. Right now I'm building Kavak. It's an auto platform to eradicate fraud and introduce financial services to people that want to buy a car. And what we're trying to do is to get people into cars that have never bought a car before and help them throughout their lifetime value. And what we're proud of and what's our purpose is is moving these people into the middle class today. 40% of people that buy a car with us is the first car that they buy. And what we're seeing is that once you buy a car, your wages go up after 24 months, double to where you were before. So we're just part of doing our part in terms of financial inclusion through an amazing tool like a car in the region.
Now, I'm going to come back this way, clockwise, anti-clockwise, just to keep things fair. You're expanding in the GCC. I've been watching the coverage in the media, listening on the radio to members of your company discussing the prospects for business. I think I'm right in saying that the region has, or certainly the UAE, maybe Saudi too, has the highest amount of cars per capita. Often more than one, often pretty nice. So a good place to be, one would argue, in the car business. Talk to me about your expansion plan. Why here, why now?
Yeah. So that answer has, I think, two layers that I have to unpack. The first one is what I thought I knew, and the second one is what I've learned in the past 15 days since I've been in the region, immersing and understanding a little bit more about everything that's going on. And on the first end, Latin America and MENA is very similar in many ways. From a cultural perspective, we're a similar culture, more similar to our counterparts in the US, I would believe. And the opportunities that we see are similar. Infrastructure doesn't exist, so if you want to build a business, you have to build several businesses and layers of infrastructure to make your business work. Rappi, Kavak, or one of those companies that we have to get into one business and build like 10 businesses to make that work. And we're, sort of like that first leg of entrepreneurs that had to build towards that complexity. And I think there's a lot to be done, and there's a lot of commonalities when you want to build a business in the region here, because everything is to be built. But what I learned in the past 15 days as I've been here is that the countries or the region is run very differently. As a founder, your job is to visualize something and then work every day to have it. And having that, being constant into building is the key to be successful. And what I found in my visit here is that the region has a vision. And the last time I came was 15 years ago, and now that I've spent some time here, you can see not only that the region has a vision, but they have a capacity to execute second to none. And what I'm excited about right now is that if you bring in, our knowledge and our experience building infrastructure, building technological companies, and work together with the local parties to help them build this vision, alignment is different. Here, every businessman that I talk to is supporting the ecosystem, wants to see it evolve. They're all part of that vision. They're all part of, how the country's going to look like. Back home, it's different because governments, they're very different in different countries. Businessmen, they still see founders and startups as the enemy, not as the solution. So the past 15 years just got me more excited about not only launching in the region, which we have, but leaning in further.
Very good, thank you. José, let me come to you. A broad portfolio, lots of diverse businesses, not least from real estate to luxury to private aviation. How do you integrate them? How does it all work seamlessly together? Is there a challenge there? I imagine so.
Yes, everything is, we are a 50-year company, and we developed our company for all those years based on the client and also on the client needs. So what is in common about all our business divisions is that they are all connected by the same client. So it's very, we are very used to see our clients buying our first homes, then spending their weekends on a project that belongs to the company also. For example, in São Paulo City and Boa Vista, it's a project that is 1 hour from São Paulo. Also used to buy in our shopping malls and stay in our restaurants, and also stay in our hotels and having lunch and dinner in our restaurants. And coincidentally, our airport, 90 or 95% is an airport dedicated to private aviation, and all the airplanes that are anchored there belongs to clients that used to be clients on the company before. So it's a company that is very focused on the client, and we try to make them more connected to the company, and also more and more related to our services.
And digitalization playing a massive part in your business going forward?
Yes, that's right, because based on that, we developed what we call JHSF ID. It's a kind of identity that our clients, they have in our group. And based on that ID, they can have many different benefits in each of our business divisions. And also, this program brought us the possibility not only to integrate them in a database, but also to provide them a loyalty program that we give cash back in different amounts based on the divisions that they are investing or they are consuming. So it's what we call J coins. So for example, if you buy a house at Boa Vista project, you collect 0.5% in cash back in J coins, and you can spend in our hotels, restaurants, and this is an integrated payment system that we are for 1 year testing, and we are going to bring more formally speaking to the market next year.
Thank you. Sebastian, let me come to you. Let's talk about tech ecosystems, what to do in countries or regions where it's not very well established, how to get them to that right place, the challenges and opportunities there for someone like you.
Yeah, I think entrepreneurship is one of the most important driver forces of progress that we have. As a tool, it really drives a country forward, a region forward. I've been very fortunate to see firsthand how that happens in our part of the world. We started a company back in 2016. It was a very, very nascent ecosystem. It was really hard to access capital. There was barely any world-class venture capital investor investing in the region. I believe back then you were talking about $400 million invested in the region. Just last year alone, we had $17, $18 billion invested. And I think if that mission is very important to us to drive progress, and we've seen firsthand how a company that becomes iconic and enduring and leads that part of the process can be a huge enabler. And in our case, we not only we do it through our product, when we serve customers, when we serve couriers, when we serve merchants, but we also see it, especially in the culture of entrepreneurship that we build in the company. And just out of Rappi alone, we have more than 150 entrepreneurs that have started very successful companies, that have hired people, that are solving real problems. So I think that lesson, if we assume that Latin America is a little ahead than the MENA region, are very, very valid. And I think with those lessons, you can take them and import them in the region and doing even better, and having local investors, taking the upside, reinvesting. We as founders, I think the three of us spend quite some time supporting the next generation of founders, investing in them. And I think those lessons are critical, and if done well, is going to be an enormous catalyst of growth in the region.
When you say you're mentoring and investing, engendering, hot housing, whatever you want to say about the next generation, are you inspired or otherwise by what you see?
I'm very inspired. I think they are building companies with a lot of lessons and a lot of mistakes that we made before when we were starting out, and they're actually doing it better, and that makes us very, very proud. And that's the quality of talent. I think is also a very important unlock. You have people that dream really, really big, but that actually know how to get there, and they have this builder's mindset on how to solve problems, create products, bring teams together, hire people. So it makes me very, very optimistic about the future with the quality of talent that we're seeing.
And I will come back to it, but the ones that think especially big, are they thinking regionally or globally?
Both, actually.
Yeah.
We think especially the more pure software companies, they are having a faster global focus. The companies that are more dealing with atoms, still technology, but dealing with the physical world, I think they take longer to expand. At least that's been our case. But you see founders that are dreaming really big, and I think we look at the emerging world, and I think the next generation of companies that are really iconic and enduring are not going to be the usual suspects from Silicon Valley. China is a different topic, but it's going to be companies that are coming from the emerging world that have broad ambitions and the teams and the capital and the products to actually become those companies. So
this is good.
Yeah.
We want to know how to invest in them. We will come back to this.
Just to complement and add one point here. When we started to invest like 15 years ago, the idea was to invest in iconic Brazilian companies. And we learned quickly, especially with our partnership with Rappi, is like the best teams in Latin America, several of them are not going to come to Brazil. So the Brazilian version become the Latin American version. Here we have 3 examples. So then, like Pierre is showing, like a company from Argentina can dominate the whole Latin America in digital banking. But then what we see there is the next step, and Carlos is doing this, I think, José also in a more traditional companies.
Yeah.
A lot of these winners in Latin America eventually will become global companies, the same way that Spotify started in Europe. And we have several examples of this in Europe, from Asia. I think if we talk and have this conversation 10 years from now, we will see companies that were started either here in MENA or in Latin America that will eventually will become global company. And this will completely change the landscape globally.
No bad thing, one would argue. In terms of fund flows, investor appetite, capital used to be hard to come by. Not so much anymore, I hear, which is encouraging. Where are the investors coming from, and what are they looking to invest in sector-wise? What's trending?
In terms of trends, I think Latin America, and just to go one step back, I think Latin America is just an amazing place because on one side, it's a huge market.
Yeah.
So in terms of GDP, it's higher than India. In terms of smartphone base, it's bigger than the US. And if we look for the income per capita, it's not like Europe and the US, but it's much bigger than Southeast Asia, for example. So a lot of business models that are not sustainable in Asia, for example, they're worth to do in Latin America. So in one side, we have a big market, both consumer and B2B. Second, we have just a strong talent base. And it's amazing to see the quality of the founders getting bigger and bigger. And like Sebas was saying, like all these new founders are being inspired by either Sebas or Carlos or Pierre. And this is creating a kind of a new generation of founders. They're way better than we saw in the market 10 years ago. And I believe like when we started, a few funds in the US, they told us, it's impossible to have amazing tech companies in Latin America, because you guys are not playing NBA. You're not even playing college basketball. It's a different league. And I think they were right, but they only saw the picture, not the movie. And the movie was, there was amazing talent, but this talent was going to consulting, banking, multinationals. And now finally, as they see that it's possible for Rappi, Kavaks, new banks, Ualas, Neons of the world, they realize, okay, I can do as well. And this is bringing talent, an amazing talent, to the region. And when you combine this with capital, as Sebas mentioned, when we started several years ago, like in a good year, Latin America would see $300 million worth of VC. Last year was 17, but let's call it an outlier. If it's 10, it's a lot of capital for the region. So it's like the market, the teams, the capital, and we start to see liquidity. If I stop now, the next question would be, okay, but how about the exits? And now finally we are seeing exits, either local IPOs, NASDAQ IPOs, and also companies in the region being acquired by international and local players. So, and what we see when we combine all of this is the wheels get in motion, and they get faster and faster. In Silicon Valley, it took 50 years for this to happen. In China, maybe 15 years, 20 years. I think in Latin America, in Africa, in MENA, this will happen faster because we are learning from all these different environments. And I think this is why, getting to your question, this is why a lot of investors are excited, because they see the next geo in terms of, okay, I saw this in China, I saw this in US, Latin America is the next destination. So, and when we start to see more liquidity, and I think today we're lucky to have these three companies because we're very bullish that a few years from now we are going to witness their IPOs probably in the US, and this will really help to complement the ecosystem.
Okay, so secondary listings, so dual listed companies coming from Latin America. Interesting to hear about the access to capital, and also the flotations, of course. But we can't ignore the macro situation, not least how badly Latin America was impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Not completely out of the woods, not least with a lot of people. Humanity is one of our themes, so a lot of people still in poverty there. Talk to me about the playing field at the moment, if you will, because we have to be cognizant of the past. We know where we want to go, but there are headwinds, aren't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And what we see in Latin America is something very similar to the Gulf region, in the sense that there's kind of two societies in each country: the people who are included and get to transact in the digital economy, and the people who are excluded.
Yeah.
And so we tend to operate in markets like Mexico, where over 50% of people have never had access to a means of payment that isn't cash. and we're convinced that 10 years from now, there will be no more cash. And so those people are completely outside of the economy. They cannot start their business, they cannot get a loan, they don't have a credit history, they cannot make investments, so they suffer inflation more than somebody who is included. And so our mission is for them to have the tools to be able to transact on Rappi or to eventually buy their car on Kavak. And if you give an account to everyone, as we saw in China or in India, you empower them to build their future. And that enables them to start businesses, to be able to take payments, and also to build a healthy financial life with credit and with investments that complements you, when you have less money than you need and more money than you need. And so that's what we do, and what we see is an opportunity, going off of what Marcelo was saying, of talent coming back to the region. We have 17 different nationalities in the team. I'm very proud to say that over 45% of my management team is female, and half of them lived abroad. And so they came back to the region because they see this opportunity and they see this growing ecosystem. There's over 100 companies that have started coming off of the Rappi ecosystem, and our companies will see people leave if they are successful and start new companies that Marcelo will then fund, so that then they can eventually buy their homes in their developments. But that creates a better ecosystem where the talent can stay there rather than go to Europe or go to the United States. And I think that's what we're starting to see in the MENA region, where there is a lot of financial exclusion as well, where there are opportunities in places like Egypt, where 70% of people have been outside of the system, or even Saudi, where 35% of the population has never had a debit card. And so there is a big opportunity there, but we need to make sure that that development happens to society as a whole and not just a subsection of it.
Can I add something?
Of course, please.
So one of my learnings while I'm being here is that you get asked a lot about the macro, and I think you have to be macro aware, but you have to be able to also separate that from the more secular trends that are happening in innovation specifically. We're all solving real problems. We're solving real problems with technology. We're taking a very long-term horizon. We're dealing in markets that have inflation. And when you're building companies and building technology, you're not focused every day on what's happening at a macro level, what's happening with the rates. You're just building and creating products that solve real problems for your customers and your audiences. And I think we need to be more discerning and ask deeper questions. You look at a market like Brazil, for example, that has an imminent election, but when you look under the hood, you realize that it's an incredibly entrepreneurial society, and the government is doing some of the most interesting, founder-friendly, innovation-friendly innovations in the planet, and that's happening despite whoever is in power. Right? So I think it's something to reflect on.
Carlos, I have to ask you, because we're in an environment where we have high inflation, people have potentially less disposable income. Are they in the market for a new car when oil prices and prices at the pump are going through the roof? Even in this region, might I say, I'm definitely paying more to fill up my car. Why launch now? You're aware of the macro situation, but still you drive on.
Well, I'm the wrong person to ask this question because I come from Venezuela. So I've seen everything fail. And when you put things into perspective, the markets look beautiful to me. And auto is an industry that is very resilient in the good times and in the bad times. It was the last industry to die in Venezuela. So I believe that I will be the last Mohican if everything goes to a terrible situation. But the reality is that my job, I have to look at the macro, I have to listen to what's going on, but ultimately what I have to do is shut down the noise and build. And there's a lot of noise. There was a lot of noise last year. There was a lot of noise a decade before that. There's a lot of noise today. What I've learned that I'm at my best and my team is at our best is when we shut down the windows, we got all the information that we needed, and then we just start listening to the only person that is important, that is our customers and our teams, and just build. The world wasn't as good last year as everybody thought it was. It's not as bad as everybody think it is today. We're sort of living in the middle, and we need to zoom in, zoom out to understand that, and that to understand that in 10 years, there's gonna be necessities that somebody has to build. And if everybody's paralyzed and freaking out like we see in the markets today, nobody's gonna build them, and the future doesn't get built on its own. But we also have, as founders, have to zoom in and understand a simple fact that capital now is more expensive. The people, there's a lot of more noise around us that can make us nervous and that can make us not make moves in the times that we should be making moves. And I'm sort of in the middle of the process, understanding, what's my role here, and I live by a simple fundamental. You know, I don't tie my emotions to the summit, right? Like the biggest problem with the founder is that you're always trying to visualize where you want to be, and sometimes you tie your emotion to the summit. And the problem with that is that you're never going to be really there, and once you're there, you're going to have other summits that you want to climb. So like what I try to do is visualize the summit, tie my emotions to where I'm living today, make sure that I'm living the present in the most real way possible, and shutting down the noise and building. So that's my perspective, but I'm a terrible macro guy. I'm better in the micro.
Incredibly modest
Can I
too.
add one thing
Yes.
there, that this environment in the macro, we have a saying in Argentina that is, the macro always gives you an excuse. And in this particular context, I think that there's a lot of potential great ideas in the region that are features and not standalone companies that create opportunities for consolidation. And so this year alone, we've bought 2 companies, one in the buy now, pay later space and another one in the credit space, and one that allows small businesses that use our merchant acquiring tools to build their online store. And that wouldn't have been possible in the market environment 18 months ago, but it makes our ecosystem stronger and better and more accessible to more people. And so I think there are opportunities in this context, and the philosophy that Carlos is talking about, the building philosophy, can allow you to take advantage of key opportunities that may not have been available in a different market environment.
What has been some of the most interesting conversations you've had on the ground in that respect, and what's your take on the region?
I think the most interesting conversation I've had in the region was at one of the dinners around FII, discussing the opening up and the changing philosophy toward entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
How 10 years ago, the vision toward an entrepreneur, a senior official at a ministry in Saudi told me that her family wouldn't have allowed her to marry an entrepreneur. And today the situation is very different, and it's encouraged, and we see a lot of growing ecosystem with talent coming back from abroad. And so this diaspora of talent that the GCC has had historically, of people that go study abroad and often stay abroad, now they're coming back and starting companies here. That attracts new capital,
Yeah.
and that attracts new possibilities, and people like Carlos that are coming in and betting on the future of the region. And so I think that change in philosophy and opening up has allowed for the creation of a local ecosystem that may be a few years earlier than Latin America, but it's headed in the same direction. It's the direction of digitization,
Yeah.
innovation, and more growth for the region, and also the diversification of the industries that traditionally underpinned these economies. And so from my perspective, I think that what is very interesting is that sometimes innovation used to come from the big conglomerates, and now it's being championed, developed, and grown from entrepreneurs that come back to their own country. And it kind of resonates with my story after having spent so much time in the US and coming back to my country, and so I love to see it here.
It's good to hear. Jose, let me come to you. What's your take on this region? Because your model is not dissimilar to many of the big family-run companies here in Saudi Arabia, also in the UAE.
Yes, just going back to macroeconomics on Latin America, I agree with all them, and we have to just also to consider that maybe Latin America in the past was not the same, was seen as a great economy as other places in the world. But right now we see there are a lot of challenges around the world. So Latin America is not different anymore. Like all the challenges that we have there, for example, inflation. We have inflation in Brazil for a long time, and Brazil learned how to deal with inflation. And we are seeing a lot of countries coming to Brazil today, or coming to the companies there, asking how do you deal with inflation and how you are going through these days. And Brazil and also Latin America is seen somehow as a benchmark in some of these new trends that we are seeing in the world. Of course, we have economic and also political challenges, but I don't see them much different than other places in the world. And at the same time, we have great opportunities in Brazil. That's important to say, and the great opportunities in Latin America. We have internal market, we have internal demand, and that's a point that for our overview is very important to consider when you take the Latin American a global perspective. We as a family-owned business, we are expanding outside of Brazil and to United States and also to Europe, and we believe that this the challenge related to an expansion plan and to an expansion strategy are to keep our DNA connected and also being able to establish the same kind of business that we established in our base region in other places in the world.
It's interesting. What advice would you give to families who are, there's that second, third generation point, isn't there, in the handover continuation of the business? Often a flex point. A lot of the companies in this region are really seeing their growth go through the roof. It's gone exponential at this pivotal time. What would your advice be to them in this new digital age and in this time of challenging macro factors?
Yes, the macro effects are the same, like being like when a company is second, third generation is the same is the same challenges that of them in each of the stage that you are in the company.
Okay. Marcelo, I want to come back to you. Sebastian was talking a little bit earlier about the kind of mentors that we have around us, these titanic brains that people want to tap for advice. What kind of a leader would you be? What kind of advice would you give to the startups, certainly in the tech space that we're seeing in Latin America right now? You said that they're making mistakes. You said that some of them are very familiar to you. What would your advice to them be today? What are you telling them?
It's a very good question. What I would say, and very aligned with Carlos on this.
Yeah.
It's better?
Perfect.
There is a lot of noise in the market today. Like there was noise last year, there is noise today, and the founders, of course, they have to see what is happening, especially in terms of funding, but they have to continue to focus on their business.
Yeah.
And what we have done as Monashees, as a venture firm, is, of course, sit with each founder and avoid kind of cutting kind of advice, and try to understand each company and share advice. There is kind of more customized for each company. And of course, it's obvious to say you have to extend runway, you have to cut cost, but beyond that, you have to continue doing your work. And it's focused on having a sustainable company. It's focused on providing a good experience for your customers. And if you do that, there will be plenty of capital for you in the coming years. We saw, and this is very connected to the conversation we had about Latin America. We have been working on Latin America for 17 years now. And if you put together Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, Colombia, we have seen a lot of economic crisis. We have seen Brazil in its worst economic crisis between 2014 and 17. We have seen crisis in Colombia. We have seen huge inflation peaks. We have seen a lot of impeachments, like in Brazil, in other parts of. So there is a common element in this region, volatility, and sometimes instability. But there is one thing that never changes. Our companies, and this is true for our portfolio and out of our portfolio, they keep growing. Especially when there was no capital available, they keep growing. And they were able to attract capital when there was no capital. Like Rappi, when they raised some of the rounds, there was not SoftBank, there was not Tigers of the world, and they were able to pull it off. So I think now it's easier. So our advice for the founders is focus on the business, focus on the most important thing at the end of the day is having a sustainable company, and you will get there. But if you focus too much on the noise and you design your strategy based on what is happening, if the market's good or bad, eventually you might have big problems. And I think an interesting element, some of the founders we backed in 2013, 14, 15, like Rappi, they were companies that were used to this reality. So when the environment changed now, they're completely used to this because they saw the market without capital. They saw the market with a lot of instability. So for them to adjust was way easier. But for founders who were born into the last 2 years in Latin America, the last 3, then it was easier. There was more capital, was easy to say, like, what is Latin America? So regardless, it's very hard to say what is going to happen in the next 2-3 years in Latin America, but I can tell with a lot of degree of certainty in the next 5 years, there's going to be an amazing opportunity for founders. So if you focus on the next day, and you'll be fine.
Okay, keep the ice in their belly. Just keep focused. Pierpaolo, would you agree that that is sage advice? And 5 to 7 years, is that an interesting timeline for you too?
I think even before that, I think that difficulty builds resilience. It happens to people, it happens to countries, it also happens to companies. And so I think that that's the philosophy with which we build, and I think that we share it because in this region we've had so many ups and downs in the macro that we have to focus on that and building the best teams. And so I go back to the idea that what differentiates good companies from great companies is the quality of the talent. And so when you can attract that talent to go back to the region, especially when like in Latin America or in the Gulf, a lot of people had used to be going abroad, bringing that talent back is essential. And I think that when I think about the future of Latin America, I think of building services in Latin America to export, not just regionally, but globally. And these companies that have grown in moments of distress and difficulty with the macro challenges are generally more resilient companies that can operate in new markets with a different degree of confidence and ability to execute.
Yes, and very much more attractive to investors too. The less spooked the CEO is, the less spooked the investor, arguably.
Well, I'll tell you a short story on this. When we launched in Mexico, a journalist in Mexico said to me, what is it like arriving in Mexico? It's so uncertain what the president will say one day or the other. And I say, well, I come from Argentina where we've had a debt default and 3-digit inflation since we launched. And so, Mexico to us is a paragon of stability, and the same with Colombia. And so in that sense, I think that resilience is a very important tool, especially when you're trying to build companies that innovate and change business paradigms.
Yes, very interesting. Picking up on the talent pool conversation, of course, now you're putting down roots in the Gulf, Carlos. How inspired are you by what you see of the local talent pool, and will you be transferring specific skills and knowledge from your company in LATAM to the region?
Yeah, so the way that we came into the region was with partnering with a local team. So we bought a local company with local knowledge that understands the ground, and that's the way that we like to do it. We come here just to provide a service, and we want to make sure that we're providing that service with local partners, with local everything, with local support. And what we can do for our partners here is help us with the strategy, with the learnings that we had before, with the infrastructure, with the capital, the resources, and spending enough time to make sure that we understand that we don't understand the region to help them. So they can guide us as well through that transformation, and taking any learnings that we get from building here, taking it to our other countries. My expansion and the way that I think about my business is through a learning phase. Every country that I'm at, I'm not there to take the market. I'm not there to make it the biggest company alone. I'm there to learn something from that. There's a strategy behind it that's going to provide something better to my company as a whole. So I have to be very strategic around how I do that. And what we've learned that the best way to do it is, if you can, partner locally and make sure that you extract all the learnings from that partnership that you can for the whole business. And that becomes my job at the end, is just hearing everything out and then just trying to make decisions that take us in the right direction.
Yes. We've been blessed with an extra, how many minutes? 5? Oh, well, I'm being told 4, so I'll take it to 6. So here we go, chaps. Quick round, very quick questions to wrap up. José, your key takeaway from FII. Fantastic event again this year, the 7th edition, Investing in Humanity. What's your takeaway?
Yes, it's very impressive. Like for me, it was the first time in Riyadh. I have been to Jeddah 12 years ago, so dramatically changed.
Wow, yes.
So it's my first time here, but like how we see the perspectives and vision of the country. It's a great honor to be here, and also to be able to share some of our business and understand better what you are doing here. It's really, really impressive. Unprecedented on the real estate industry. So for me, it's a great honor to visit and to understand better about the country.
Shukran, as we say, it's an honor to have you here. Very quickly, you have 10 seconds on the clock, Sebastian.
I think this hotspot of optimism in the world that you see in this region, in Saudi, And not only the big vision, but the ability to execute towards that mission. I feel everyone operates like a company in a really entrepreneurial way, and I think that's a lesson for the world. And we need to get closer to other parts. That will be my second learning. I think what we know, our region, I still think that we need to get closer because we share a lot of cultural traits.
Okay, thank you. Bring the global world a little bit closer together. Marcelo, 10 seconds for you.
I think, and thanks again for inviting me. It was great to be here. And I think there are a lot of uncertainty in the world, like conflicts and inflation, recession. But I think overall there's a lot of optimism about the future, especially medium, long term. And it was great to come here and see that a lot of things that we see in Latin America are present here, culture-wise, but in terms of tech opportunities. And it's good to see, and coming from Latin America, seeing here in China, it's more and more we realize that Silicon Valley is not a region, it's a mentality, and it's becoming a global mentality. It's not there, but it's in Latin America with these 3 examples. It's in other parts of the world, and in the future, I think, as a society, we'll reap a lot of benefits of starting to have this exponential entrepreneurial evolution.
Okay, one word for you, Pierpaolo. Will you be back?
Yeah, we'll definitely be back. Beautiful, beautiful time. Thank you for having me. And I think this focus on the future is amazing.
Lovely. Carlos, you'll be back, obviously. I'll see you in Dubai in a matter of hours, no doubt.
For sure. That's what I'm taking away, that I spent too little time and I need to probably come here and spend a month immersed.
You must.
There's only one word for this region.
See Alula. Riyadh is fantastic. Jeddah is
Alula.
beautiful. Alula is spectacular. And on that beautiful note, thank you very much. Muchas gracias para todo. Thank you to my